All right, so we are joined all the way from London in the United Kingdom by Jessie Auguste, co-founder of the Glowing in Tech podcast, software engineer, speaker all over the world, South Africa, Europe, all over the place. Great podcaster. They're a cybersecurity expert, multiple program certifications. We thank you so much for joining us today. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this for all of our computer science engineering students in the Madison County School District in the middle and secondary schools. So thank you again for taking some time for joining us all the way from across the Atlantic today.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg. Really excited to be here.
Now, before we get into your in your tech career and what you do every day as a software engineer, you went to Sheffield University, got a degree in psychology, and you said yourself you really didn't have an idea what you wanted to do when you went to university. So, take us back to that process, because that's a common tale even here in the United States for students coming out of school and then taking that step. And the funny thing is, we have a lot say, "I want to major in psychology," and then they have no idea what to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was definitely one of those people at school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. There were so many options, and I remember having all the pressure and it feeling like the decision I made then would impact the rest of my life. And I really needed to think about it, and it had to be sure exactly 100% I wanted to do this. And now, if there was one piece of advice I could go back and give myself, it would be to chill, just keep going with what I'm enjoying, study hard, but study the things that I'm interested in studying. So I did pick psychology because it was fascinating and I really enjoyed it. But I also didn't know what working in tech was like. I didn't know what kind of careers there were available. I didn't know that it was so difficult and kind of rare to find of something that's fulfilling in psychology and also that pays well relative to other jobs. And I didn't know that tech was so broad and had so many options. So I think for me, studying psychology was great. I didn't really appreciate what the employment prospects were like until after I finished my degree, but I don't regret it. So I ended up going to a marketing role at a tech startup, which is all about the behavioral science and psychology of how people behave online. And that way I felt like I was fusing a little bit of something I knew. I was studying something that was I was working somewhere that cared about psychology and was all about building on behavioral science fundamentals. And that was where I got exposed to the world of tech. That was where I got to meet software engineers for the first time and really be like, wow, like this tech thing is really cool. Yeah, so it was at that point that was when I was realizing that I wanted to switch careers and become a software engineer. Because up until that point, I didn't really know that was an option for me. I wasn't
Yeah.
very good at maths. I didn't have computer science at secondary school. And I don't think I had the grades that would have let me study at university. So yeah, I had no idea until the point I actually got to meet software engineers at the place I was working at.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because you were in customer success, which is also known as customer service, and that is a huge part of psychology. But then the pandemic hit, and you talk about this in your podcast. The pandemic hit, and that kind of forced you to kind of look into other areas. And same thing in the United States. Tech is a field you don't necessarily need to go the university route to get into. We have some great computer science programs here in Mississippi and across the South, but these tech companies are really wanting people with the skills, the experience, and then the ability to work as a team, because a lot of these jobs are remote. But the more coding languages you can learn, the more money you can make for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there are so many communities online. So I joined Coding Black Females during the pandemic and joined their team as well, helped run their events. But they put me onto loads of different boot camps and courses. And it's all about kind of figuring out what you like. I did a boot camp with a lot of different women. We're all still in touch today. And some of us really enjoyed front end, some of us really enjoyed back end, some of us enjoyed both. And we've all kind of split off into these different paths coming from the same beginnings. So that's another thing I really love about tech. And I really love about the way that the tech industry can educate you. There are so many different pathways within tech. It's so broad, and even within coding and even within being a software engineer, there are so many different routes and things you can learn. So yeah, that's something I've definitely enjoyed.
Now, you just mentioned something, and that's what I wanted to talk about next, is because you are a back end engineer when it comes to software, and there is a big difference between front end and back end. Even though once you have your foot in the door, you really could do both. So, kind of explain the difference between front end and back end, because we all see what the work the front end engineer does, because that's the design of the website, the security on the website. But what is on the back end? Because that's kind of what happens first.
Absolutely. So the back end is all about how you create and store data, and it's specifically like how you then transform it into ways for the packet for the front end to then ingest and serve to the people using the website. So I really love back end because it's the more kind of, well, actually, both are very experimental, but the thing I really enjoy about being in the back end is experimenting a lot and figuring out how can we transform this data? What are some of the really cool ways that we can process this? Right now, AI and machine learning is all the rage. Like, how can I
Yeah.
create data sets which we can then feed into machine learning engines and which we can then kind of transform and do really cool things with so that the front end can present those graphs and present that data. So for me, it feels like the kind of fundamental step. I'm not amazing at front end things, and there's a whole set of challenges there. I really enjoy getting into the kind of problem solving aspect that the back end offers.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because you said yourself you weren't a math person, you didn't think you could do well in a computer science program, but I think it's really cool. And you talked about this in your podcast about if somebody does the university route, they could get a degree in something like psychology or in business, and then get the tech certifications. Because these companies want people that can sell. Because your company, they're your cybersecurity company, you guys are selling a product. Even if you have a great product, you have to have people to sell it, and you have to have people to manage the employees. So it really is a field that needs a multitude of skills. Now, if you can learn the coding languages even on your own, because we have 13, 14-year-olds that are starting to learn to code now. Those are things they can translate and start getting certifications now. You have those certifications when you finish secondary school. You go to university, you get a degree, maybe take a few coding classes. You're that much more marketable for these tech careers that are popping up in every company.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible now that what is available, what's free and open source, and all the courses you can take, because you can start at whatever age. You could start looking into it now. And it's just so exciting because, yeah, you're just opening a whole load of doors. A lot of people, it's not even necessarily about the certification, but it's just being able to say, hey, I use this technology in a side project. I built this thing at home just for fun, and this is how I can prove to you that I have these skills. And that's sometimes that's all the company needs to see. For me, for my in order to transfer from customer success into engineering, that was kind of my interview process. I showed them what
Yeah.
I'd built on my boot camp. There wasn't a technical exam for me to pass because they already knew me. They knew that I was good at putting whatever I put my mind to, I'd be able to achieve. So it was just like, let's see what you do have, let's see what you can do so far. And I think that's something that's quite unique to tech.
Yeah, and another cool thing, and I know this is the same in the UK as well, is that going the military route. Military is using top of the line technology. You're not paying a dime to do it. You're getting paid, and when you get out, you're looking at a six-figure job. And then also, I know in the UK, there's a great community college program. Here in the United States, we have kids that say, I don't want to do the university route. I just want to go to school, get a certification. You get a certification in 1 year. Even if you're 19 years old, you have that certification. You've got your foot in the door already.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I would say that companies now are, especially where they've got like apprenticeships and kind of work experience programs, having time, proven time in you doing something practical alongside these companies and finding out what it's like. Because a lot of the time when it's your first job and your first time working in like a corporate or office job, they just want to know that you are able to work with other people. Can you do the kind of um like working in a team? Can you work on your own? Can you deliver to deadlines? All those kind of things. So that doesn't necessarily have to be in a technical capacity. It can be, but yeah, there are so many options now with those kind of opportunities.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned AI as well. We've had a couple of AI experts here in the U.S. and robotics experts that have spoken. And the media all over the world, I know it does on the BBC and over here as well. They want to scare us saying AI is going to take away our jobs, and that's not the case. These tech jobs are going to be there, but it's not going to be the different amount of people that are needed. It's a different type of skill that is going to be needed. So I know you've learned several languages, and you're still learning more language. You talked about learning Python recently, and you've learned Java, HTML, some of the basic ones, but you're learning some other ones as well. There was one you mentioned I'd never heard of, Git. Is that a
Oh
language
yeah,
you talked
yeah,
about?
yeah.
So, and you're constantly learning these. So, talk about first of all what all these languages do, and second, why it's so important to keep learning these because even though jobs aren't going away, the types of jobs are changing.
Yeah, I think the types of jobs are changing, but I think one of the things that the argument of like the main argument behind being scared of AI taking over jobs is that it's going to be able to replace us and it's going to be able to do what we do faster than us. And I don't think that's true. I think anybody that has worked with AI realizes that as soon as you start working with it, it needs so much support in the problem solving aspect. It's great at you give it one question and it'll throw you out the answers. And, you know, I don't know, 70, 80% of the time that can be great. But there's
Yeah.
so much problem solving that only we can do right now and that AI just really isn't very good at right now. What I will say though is it has made my job incredibly more efficient, like a lot more efficient in that I can use it to automate the boring stuff. I can use it to support me in the bits I'm a little bit weaker in. And it's actually something that has made my job even more enjoyable because now I've got more time and more energy to think about the more complex parts that require the creativity that people often don't think is a part of coding. But most of my job, I think, and most of what I do as an engineer is trying to figure out how to approach a problem and how to break it down and what ways I can integrate with things that already exist and what needs to be built in a new way. And that's stuff that AI just can't touch yet. In terms of learning languages and learning new technologies, I also say that's one of the main benefits of a tech job is a lot of people, a lot of jobs will be the same thing nearly every day for the entire duration of that job. With tech, that is not the case. You will have to be constantly changing the way you're learning things because there are all these new developments. And
Yeah.
while that can seem scary to some, I think it's an incredibly rewarding thing. Like, even as a junior engineer, there were projects I was able to pick up where the technology was so new, it hadn't been around for anybody to be an expert in it yet. So I
Yeah.
got to be the expert in it. And like
That's
I was a
awesome.
junior, I got to teach seniors about how to use this specific technology. And that's something incredible. That's not something you would get in most jobs. So to me, it seems like it's one of the biggest benefits to working in tech. Everybody's a beginner quite often, and it's not about how much you know in any given time. It's how much you're able to learn and how much you're able to approach new things.
Yeah, and before I get to the students' questions, one thing we have to talk about. You just got back from South Africa doing a big speech, and I know you got involved with Coding Black Females and on your podcast, Glowing in Tech on YouTube. You really are big on diversifying the tech industry, and I know it's big in the UK, it's big in the United States, and you shared an article recently where the BBC said there are 20,000 missing minority women in the tech field. And one thing we talked about here that I never thought about, and we had a lady here in Alabama that wrote a book called Unconscious Bias, where she talked about the way the AI is programmed. If there's not diversity in the field, groups and genders are going to be left behind. And it's not that people are evil, it's not that people are racist, but if people aren't aware of certain issues, especially with the growth of health informatics, AI and tech in the medical field is growing faster than any other area. So you are very passionate about diversifying this field and really getting young people of all races and all genders involved. So talk a little bit about that and why that's so important.
Absolutely. And that's Dr. Joy, right? That you're talking about. I'm so excited to read her book about I've seen her film and yeah, love her work. She's incredible. So I think on a fundamental level, tech can only serve the people it's built by. And I think there have been so many examples. And as a group of women that I'm speaking to, I'm sure you know about how or you might not know about the when Apple released the period tracking app and they only allowed it to track up to periods which last up to 7 days. And that there clearly wasn't a woman in that room who was able to say, actually, for some women, periods last longer than that. And so that's an example of like a tech product being built by people who it doesn't serve and that having a fundamental flaw. I think that there is so much space for voices from people from underrepresented backgrounds because we are the people that consume that technology. If we think about some of the most incredible Apple innovations, they have been what are initially like accessibility features for people with different needs, but they end up being something that serves everybody. And I think that's the case for most technology. If we have considered a diverse perspective of kind of the audience and the people that consume it, the tech is just better. Like there's so many studies that show that companies are more profitable when there are women on the board, when there's diversity of thought in the room, making these big decisions. And I think that we all deserve to have things that work well for us. I mean, with Dr. Joy, her work started with her standing in front of like facial recognition, right? And it not picking up her face because she was a black woman. Um, I think things like that are proof time and time again that we need a more diverse group of people in the rooms. And I think often when I talk to women, when I talk to Black people, when I speak to people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, like whose parents didn't go to university, who yeah, are just kind of left out of these rooms. It's not that they don't want to be there, it's that they don't even know there's an option to be there. And it was definitely like
Yeah.
that for me when I joined the tech industry and I got my first software engineering role. I was like, damn, I wish I'd known about this sooner because it's so much fun. I'm learning so much. It's well paid. Everybody should know about this. Why doesn't everybody know about this? So I think that's one of the main things that yeah, is one of the main reasons I care so much about letting other people know and trying to get as many people involved as possible.
Yeah, and literally every company on the planet has tech people. And then, we talked about the health informatics. Even if it's not people working for that healthcare facility, they're contracting out tech companies to have their machines. You go in a hotel, you go in a restaurant, you go in a bank. There's tech people behind the scenes that we never see that are, especially in your case with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is where it's at right now, protecting because it's easier than ever to hack into computer systems. You've got to have cybersecurity people, especially in the financial institutions. So it really is something that is going to continue to grow, and it needs everybody at the table. And I know you've talked about that, and that's the last thing we're going to get to before we get through these questions is talk about your podcast, Glowing in Tech. That's the way I found you on YouTube, and you've talked about some real
Yeah.
issues that even though you guys are in the UK, a lot of the things on there apply to everybody because it's the same issues in the United Kingdom that we have in the United States. So, what really led you to start that podcast with you and your friend Amber Shand and talk about these issues with a lot of other minority tech professionals?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it started when me and Amber were doing our boot camp and we were looking online to consume loads of tech content. We wanted to learn everything. We were brand new to it. So where can we find voices? And everything we came up against or everything we found was from white men primarily. And if not a white man, then maybe a white woman. But there was very little coming from the perspective of the people that looked like us. And it was a little bit daunting.
Wow.
Like a lot of the things we did see was about when we were asking where do we find black content made by black women about tech roles, um,
Wow.
there was very little. But at the same time, we were part of the coding black females community, and we knew so many incredible black women who were doing these jobs. We just couldn't see them online, so we thought we wanted to interview them, put them on a kind of platform, showcase them, and think if we're struggling with this and it makes us feel a little bit uneasy about joining an industry where we don't see many people like us, I wonder if there are other women and other people from minority backgrounds who feel the same. And so it started from that, really. We just wanted to create the content that we ourselves couldn't find. And it's been incredible because it's grown over time to include some incredible, amazing women like Dr. Anne-Marie Imafidon, who's like a child prodigy who was
Yeah.
the youngest person to get a master's in computer science from the University of Cambridge and things like that.
Wow.
It started out of a need to see and hear voices like ours, and now has grown to something yeah, really incredible. So it's been a
Yeah,
great
and it's
journey.
and it's and it's led to you getting all kind of international recognition. Like you've won some awards. You've been in some national magazines in the UK and in United States, and getting to go to South Africa was that had to be a thrill. So you're really just that idea. I always say even if somebody's not a tech person, a small idea to make a change can snowball quickly. It gets in the right hands, and you guys have
Absolutely.
really made a footprint here just the last couple of years, and that's really awesome.
Thanks so much, Greg.
Well, I do have some questions from the students. I like this one. This is Rondell Ellis. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "What was the hardest part? What did you struggle with? What did you struggle with the most to get to where you are now?"
Oh, that's a great question. I think what I struggled with the most was my own self-belief. I think something that happens with tech is, I spoke about it before, but being a beginner for quite a while or forever, really. And so you come into these rooms and there are people who have computer science degrees, there are people that have been doing it for a long time, and being able to feel like you belong to be there can be really difficult in the beginning. But I think over time, it's just having the right support and having I guess the feedback from other people as well as self-belief in yourself that you deserve to be there, that your voice, even if in the beginning you're just asking questions, should that really be like that? Is that going to be the best thing for the person using the app? Like those are all meaningful ways that you can contribute. And I think, yeah, that was probably a tough part in the beginning.
Absolutely. And you've talked about imposter syndrome. And we have another friend of the class that's an African immigrant here to the United States. And she's dealt with a lot of the same issues being an immigrant. So it's not uncommon, but you're a perfect example of you get your foot in the door, you start asking the questions, people are going to notice that you're making a difference.
Definitely. And I think one
Here's a
more
good
thing on that is like, when you're in a technical role, your work will speak for itself. If you're right, your work will be right. And there is a lot less that people can do to disprove whether you're right or wrong. Because if your code works, it works. Like that, and that's
there
a
you
really nice
go.
thing to be able to fall back on.
Absolutely. Here's a good one. This is Michael Sherrill. He plays American football here at Velma Jackson. He's in 10th grade. And he asked, what do you enjoy most about your career?
What I enjoy most is probably the flexibility and the ability to travel. Like you said, I've gotten to travel to some amazing places this year, and it's not just with speaking opportunities or extracurricular things. We get to travel a lot with work as well. Um, I work at a remote first company, and I've got colleagues all over the world. So whenever I travel to different places, there's often a colleague I get to go and meet and stay with and work with in person, and that's been an incredible thing. And then also, and this is you asked for one, but the other one is just being able to contribute to a meaningful change in the world. Cybersecurity is scary. There are big societal issues that we're trying to address. We're trying to make it more accessible, and I'm a little part of that. It feels really nice to be able to think that I'm trying to, yeah, change the world for the better.
That's awesome. Here's a good one. This is Levon Johnson. He's in 9th grade, and he's asking specific questions about languages. He asked, which one is easier, Java or C++?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't really done very much C++. plus plus. I did enjoy Java. I think Java is a great one to understand some fundamental concepts. But I do think that once you've learnt one and you understand those concepts, it's a lot easier to move to others. So if you're going to pick one, stick to it until you feel like proficient, you know your way around it, you get the basic concepts, and then try and move around and see what other ones. Because a lot of it as well can be down to personal preference. Different industries have different standards of which one they use, but definitely like play around, see what you like.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And like you said, and you've even mentioned, we'll get the podcast here at the end. You've mentioned some programs on your podcast I'd never heard of that you guys really enjoy. So you start getting certified in these new programs right out of high school. You've got a certification that can get you in the field. So I think that's really important. Here's a good one. This is Tykevian Boyd. He's very interested in video game design, and he's in the 10th grade. And he asked, "What do you think is the best course of action for someone interested in tech that has just graduated from secondary school?"
Oh, great question. I think start building some side projects, start doing some stuff at home like that you are interested in. If you're interested in game design, have a look at how to build a little basic mobile app, basic game, something, a web game, web app, and just try to understand the fundamental skills that are involved in that field. That's the kind of thing that will really impress an employer if you're applying for roles and you say, hey, look, here's this thing I built at home, and this is how, and it demonstrates X, Y, and Z part of your job role. I think people are always very impressed when they can see that passion because you've spent some time learning and you've spent some time building.
Absolutely, and that's the cool thing about tech is it's you can get in it a multitude of ways. I just got one more. This is Krishan Smith. He's in 10th grade, also another American football player. So I had to mess with you on that. But he asked, "What would be some advice if I was interested in getting to tech and wasn't sure which field to choose?"
Ooh, I'd say try and think about something that is really important to you outside of work and school, like at home. What's something that think about a problem that you'd like to solve. So, for example, I think something that I built on early on was about um mindfulness and being able to kind of have peaceful moments outside of social media. So the first app I built was something that helps to refocus on that. And like
Wow.
I see that a lot of people I know, and myself included, are inundated with negative news all the time and sad stories. So I built an app that focused, it was displaying using an API, um, good news stories, just something simple. And you could open the app and it would show you some good news stories from around the world. And like thinking about that was a problem that was specific to me or specific to people around me. And it was a great way for me to try and build something. And that way, like in the research and in the planning, you'll be exposed to all different areas of tech. And that, for example, was tech for good and health tech. But if you try and think about the things you're interested in, if you're an American football player, you're probably interested in sports, then try and think about sports tech and have a look at what sports
Yeah,
tech innovations there have been. Definitely go with your interests.
absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us today. But before we go, first of all, tell us where to find Glowing in Tech online.
Glowing in Tech is available on YouTube and all podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts or Apple Music and Spotify. Yeah, thank you so much, Greg, and all of you for your
Uh,
wonderful questions. I know that
yeah,
with Greg as your professor, you've got some incredible support. Definitely make the most of that. And yeah, just pursue what you enjoy. And please, please, please feel like you have a place in tech because you absolutely all do.
yeah, and the last thing, even though you're across the Atlantic, you deal with the same struggles that these kids deal with. You grew up as a young minority female in the UK, and you face the same imposter syndrome that kids in the United States face. But yet you've become extremely successful and are just, putting your mark all over the world. So obviously it can be done. So when these obstacles come, what can these kids do to be just as successful as someone like you?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think wherever, whatever like intersection you're from, whether you're a black woman, whether you're a black boy, whether you're somebody with accessibility needs, there are groups and communities for people like you that are made specifically for people like you in tech. So Coding Black Females is a great one, obviously in the UK, but I know there's Black Girls Code and I know there's Code
Yep.
First Girls.
Yep.
Code Bar is another one. Just have a look for those communities that will help you feel that belonging, because those are usually full of people that have a load of resources, a load of advice, a load of different virtual events where you can learn. And they'll also have the opportunities and those connections with the companies that are looking to hire from different perspectives in different parts of the world. So find a community and find your belonging. I think that would be my number one piece of advice.
Wow, great stuff. And again, we thank you so much for joining us, Jessie Auguste, all the way from London, United Kingdom, host of Glowing in Tech. Thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Thanks so much, Greg. It's been great to speak to you. I hope you all have a lovely day.
All right. Thanks again, my friend. Have a great day. See ya.
Bye.